So I think use that.
You know what?
Recording in progress.
All right, so this is a regularly scheduled public facilities meeting. It is Wednesday, February 4th. And at the beginning of the meeting from Ward 1, we have Councilor Leary. Ward 2, Councilor Albright. Ward 3, Councilor Kelly. Ward 6, Councilor Gordon. I'm Councilor Kalis from Ward 8. Anybody else? I don't see him.
Yeah.
That's it, I think. Okay. Good. I know that Councilor Diamondback's out of the country.
Back.
Oh, yeah, just texted. So first item. Oh, we also have the Director of Transportation and Planning, Jen Martin. Thank you for being here. Planning Outreach Coordinator Hannah Sternberg. Good to meet you and thank you for being here. And Commissioner of Public Works, John Sullivan, thank you for being here. And our clerk, Lisa Pennell. All right, first item is 41-26, request for periodic updates on data collected on the Washington Street pilot. Councilors Albright, Princeman, Kelly, Leary, Bixby, Kalis, Block-Wright, Greenberg, Gordon, and Charm requesting updates on the Washington Street pilot redesign, including a presentation and reminder on baseline data collected, periodic updates as data is collected during the term of the pilot, reports on changes made during the pilot period with reasons for them, and reports on snow clearing during the winter snow plowing season.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll try and be brief. I'm sort of the overview, the context, we're gonna reorient ourselves. It's been a while. And then I'll pass it to Jen, who's gonna go into the heavy adjustments and the data collection. And then Shauna will finish us up with snow removal. So yeah, again, these are our table of contents.
Being joined by Councilor Getz.
Here we go.
Hi.
It's a little delayed.
Oh, there we go.
All right, there we go.
Full screen. Oh. Oh, yeah.
Cool. So just to get us kicked off, this is the area that we're looking at for the project limits. So between Lowell Ave and Chestnut Street. And then again, just for more context, bringing up the 2019 Washington Street Vision Plan adopted by the City Council in December of 2019, covering Washington Street through West Newton and Newtonville. Newtonville, and then just helping us as staff and citywide to assist in informing our discussion about public investment in guiding development and zoning changes, and that's sort of where we're at with coming up with our goals and our vision for Washington Street for this pilot. And then for the cost of the project, this is a breakdown, and this is all available on our website as well. So 2.2 million in ARPA funds for construction and data collection.
That's not showing.
It's not showing up. I think it's delayed, so, okay, there we go. 500,000 in HCA funds for design, 50,000 in Newton Crossing mitigation funds for handrails at the bus stops, and then 50,000 in state earmark for additional landscaping.
What's HCA?
HCA is the cannabis fund, so,
Yeah.
post community.
No tax dollars for about 10 years. Tax dollars.
Let's see, let me go back. Okay, so these are the key features of the pilot. So we have the protected shared use path, using low cost flexible materials, and then unlocking south side parking, greener streets, some landscaping on the south side as well, protecting Mounts Pike. And then safer crossings using the pedestrian median islands and these signs, and then improved bus access with these raised platforms, these modular platforms. And then, let's see, it's delayed. These are some pictures throughout the implementation process. So we have pre-construction, during construction, and then towards the end of the construction, the Zikla bus platforms, that was in August. So that was the last thing to go in. And then this is a picture of the landscaping, and then various members of the project team walking through. And then quickly, again, high level, from plans to construction to completion. So yeah, again, super high level, starting with the curb and landscape prep work all the way to where we're at today with a public facilities update with our data collection. And then I'll quickly go into communications, which is important because this is how we receive feedback for creating adjustments. So we sent postcards to abutters within a radius that I'll show on the next slide. And then we had our project email, which was heavily utilized by people to let us know how things were going. And again, just to reiterate, we did send postcards to abutters. And then here's an interesting graph of the emails that we received over time. And you can see these spikes. Those were during pretty heavy construction periods when it was very noticeable that there was changes happening along the corridor. And then we also had 6 large yard signs that you may have seen that were out there. And then again, we received over 200 emails and we responded to them as well. And then again, a further breakdown, about a third of them were strongly supportive, a third of them were negative, and then a third were pretty neutral with just general questions or suggestions. And then we used Constant Contact, and we had a project email list of around 840 people. And we sent 10 newsletters that we also pinned to our website. And there was an average open rate of 80%, which was great. So people were well informed. We were updating them of construction, of any changes. Yeah, and then we uploaded everything to the website, and that's the abutter radius of who got those postcards. And we also canvassed the businesses during heavy operation, construction periods to make sure that things were smooth and we could hear feedback from them as well. And then I'll kick it to Jen for the adjustments.
Okay, thank you. So as Hannah mentioned, we received extensive feedback from residents, from corridor users, and from businesses early on during construction. So we were able to take a look at that feedback, also staff feedback, feedback from Newton Fire. And we were able to design our first set of modifications in late July and then implement them in August when we were still under contract with our construction company, IW Harding. So these are the first sets, and the memo goes into detail on these. So I'll keep it a little bit higher level here through that. So the first one is the dashed lane markings at Lowell Ave, which you can see in the first image there. So we heard feedback from people driving in both directions that because the lanes shifted a little bit, they were concerned that drivers would stay in the lane. We also noticed that, and there continues to be underutilization of that eastbound northern lane there. So a lane where you're headed towards, that's Lowell there. You're driving down Washington Street towards Boston, and you can take a left from that lane or continue straight. We wanted to encourage drivers to use that left lane. So this was an easy addition. It really clarified lane assignments, and it did get more people using both of those lanes and really feeling much more comfortable driving through there. The next change that we identified was this is the first parking spot headed west after Lowell. So turning vehicles here, you can see in the left-hand image there, there's that car turning. Drivers were a little bit uncomfortable getting aligned correctly so that you would avoid a vehicle in that first parking spot as you turned. City staff also observed that with some of our city trucks. So we removed that very first spot, and we are looking at preserving as much parking as we can along the corridor. So we removed that first spot, and it seems to be working better operationally. Similarly, at Trader Joe's, we removed the first spot as you exit the driveway looking to your left. We heard a lot of feedback from residents that they had a hard time seeing around that first parked vehicle. So we preserved one parking spot. There is high parking utilization right in that area. Removed that first parking spot. I feel like that was a good compromise and makes it feel more comfortable for drivers. Also, Newton Fire approached us that they wanted to make sure that their ladder trucks could comfortably move through the corridor. So we did a few lane width adjustments. One is here in front of Jacobs gas station. We were able to shift a taper there towards the turn lane to make a little bit more space in the eastbound lane there, so on the south side. That was an easy shift, just of pavement markings, and it met their needs. And then similarly, and we don't have an image of it, and in front of Trader Joe's, we shifted the parking spots closer to the shared use path and added an edge line. And so drivers reported being more comfortable opening up their car doors. It felt like they had a little bit more space there. And we shifted cars a couple feet over, so the fire department was much more comfortable as well. We also have made a number of minor sign and pavement marking adjustments that we don't need to go into details here on, but just minor shifts and clarifications and making sure signs were pointing the right direction. More recently, we made a couple other additions that we've been working on since this fall. One are the object markers on the planters. So this is an MUTCD approved sign. We heard feedback from lots of residents that we wanted to make sure the planters were more visible. And this is the standard sign that you use for something like that. And so there's the sign now facing the planters, so facing drivers and then also facing cyclists. So this should help draw attention to the planters, especially in low light conditions or weather conditions. We also added in crosswalk pedestrian signs, which you can see here on the median islands. They're on paddles, so are a little bit more flexible and also are right down by the line of sight of drivers. We use the metal signs that were planned there to double up the pedestrian signs on each post on either side. Now we're going to go into the data collection, which I know you guys are waiting with great interest.
Before we do that, are there any questions? Any of the preliminaries? Yeah.
So, two comments that I got this afternoon at our office hours. Could you make the middle lane narrower and the driving lane wider? This was a gentleman who's a little on the older side and he felt that the driving lanes were a little narrow for him. So that was a question that he asked, so I passed that on to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can take that into consideration. That's what we worked with Newton Fire to do in some spots, was to make the driving lane wider. There's a minimum width that turn lanes need to be.
Okay, so we have, just have a look.
Yeah,
If you
thank
can,
you.
you can.
Yeah.
The other thing he wanted was and I'm not sure I understand this, but the refuge island, he said, could you move refuge islands to the east side instead of the west side of the crosswalks?
They're on the east.
Maybe he wants you to move to the west. That was, for some reason, that was an idea that he thought would be useful.
So we put them on, I don't know, do we have an image of the, so the pedestrian refuge islands and, oh, this is a great example. The pedestrian refuge islands and crosswalks are, oh, maybe he means the smaller piece in the front versus the larger platform in the
Maybe.
back. Huh, that's an interesting idea.
East or west?
So this would be, the crosswalks are all on the east side of the intersection to allow for this left turn pocket on the west side. So that pedestrians only need to cross one lane at a time. So we shifted all the crosswalks on the corridor to the east side of the intersection to allow for those left turn pockets.
So maybe I'll give you his contact information so that you can ask him what he did,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll see if it's worthwhile. One other thing was that someone commented that they told you about the sightline problem coming out of, I think it was Walker or something. It's asking you to move some cars and you immediately moved them.
Oh,
Great, they were thrilled that you
Oh.
did that. I guess, oh, the other comment was about, coming out of Brookside to make a turn is very difficult now because there's only one lane of traffic and people are constantly coming from Lowell Avenue or else West Newton, and it's very hard to make a turn. I don't know what you could do to fix that, but I'm letting you know that that's an issue.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we had heard some other suggestions about shifting more parking there, but parking is being utilized. Was it Brookside or Brooks Ave?
No, it was Brookside.
Side?
He said sometimes you have to wait close to 5 minutes to get out of the street.
Okay. Yeah, we can take that and take another look at that.
Thank you, that's all I've got.
Just, welcome Councilor Grossman, member of the committee, and Councilor Maliki. Thank you for coming. Councilor Cleary.
I think there's about 350 more of those locations where it's hard to get out. It's so busy here. I just a quick question about, you said that you had canvassed businesses and I was curious, what kind of feedback did you get from them? And did you do sort of feedback before and after, or what was the time frame?
Yeah, so we canvassed them before there were big road changes and more so alerting them like, we're gonna detour part of this street during this time. Will your driveway be impeded by this? When's your, highest amount of business? So we actually did a change. We talked to Dunkin' Donuts and Sullivan Tire and we decided to go in the other direction of fog sealing and the blasting of the pavement. So that it would be better for their morning customers. There wouldn't be an issue of them pulling in and out of the driveway. There's like a 15-minute period where cars wouldn't be allowed to be on that part of the road, right?
Yeah.
So that was a lot of the canvassing that we did. We received mixed feedback. Some businesses just opposed the project, and we were really there just to provide information. But we took back what they said to our team, and
And have you gotten any more recent feedback from businesses?
nothing in particular.
Since it's been.
Yeah, nothing in particular. I did speak to someone who works at Trader Joe's, actually on the phone today, who was just talking about different issues and positive things as well, but just expressing some minor issues that we've already been receiving. Some of this other feedback that we have been taking into consideration.
So you're still sort of making some changes, and getting
Yeah.
feedback to figure out
We
what's
can-
gonna work.
Yeah, we can, we welcome your feedback on further outreach or community input. Right now, we have a new administration, and so we'll see what they're interested in doing in terms of feedback. Most of our feedback to date has been phone calls and email. And then also I received the emails that were sent to city council were forwarded to me as well, so we've been receiving those as we go. And then a lot of it is talking to people on the phone and further understanding their concerns. But we'd like to do more formal outreach, probably more so this spring. We wanted it to be in for a lot longer for people to get used to it. And then a lot of the concerns that people had expressed, we sort of are moving along on those. Snow had been a big concern, and now we're getting to see that. And as we head into the spring, some of the things like the planter, it's not being visible. We just put those signs in January. So we'll do more formal outreach in the spring and are open to suggestions for how to do that and what sort of questions to ask too.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Kelly.
Thank you. Speaking of the planters, I was figuring you were gonna come back to them because I've heard a lot about it. They were very hard to see at night. And I see those kind of unattractive but visible signs you've had to put on, which is part of it. I'm seeing the more things don't work, the more signage you have to do to prevent the problems, and it's starting to look a little visually cluttered and to me about that. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, I've heard that you guys were thinking about removing the planters. Is that not true? Okay, that was just from like constituents who said, yeah, they got so much negative feedback about the planters, they're gonna take them away. So I'm going straight to the source.
So I should clarify, at this point, we don't have any plans to do anything. It needs to be revisited with the next set of changes developed, and sort of thinking about, in regards to all the signs, part of it is it being a pilot and trying all these things out.
Yeah.
And then thinking about what we want long-term. We do get feedback about, all the vertical elements, reflectivity.
Yeah.
But the more you build into infrastructure, the less you need some of the interim
I think the
material.
better designed it is, the less signs you need. And so you're adding more and more signs to prevent. So anyway, that's just a comment. When you say you have not gotten much business input, what about Steiner at Parsons?
Yeah.
Because you didn't mention that.
Yeah.
So I know that that's an issue.
So they had reached out to John Sisson, the Economic Development Director, and I think it just sort of fell through the cracks. So I will make a note of that and I'll reach out to them.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, I can go into detail on what the request was. They receive these large canvas, I'm not a canvas, so I don't know, are they baby brands?
They're trucks that can no longer access them because of the way it got reconfigured at Parsons. They no longer have the ability to receive their big pianos, which now have to go to their Waltham warehouse. They have to privately hire small trucks to move them from Waltham to the store because this configuration didn't take the turning radii into consideration for them. So that's my word, and I've been hearing about this all the way along, so I'm surprised to hear you not say you have been told that.
I have been in touch with them. I met with
Okay.
them several times, and we have a proposed solution, which
Okay, what
is
is that?
to add parking meters in front of their business. And then they can reserve the parking meters for these deliveries.
Well, I said, just put the cones out when you know the truck's.
So we have a formal mechanism to be able to do this. They can add parking meters in front of their business, and then they don't need to turn on Parsons. They could docket the request through you. That would be great.
I'm in touch. What if people park in those spots then? If there's a meter,
So,
They
but-
need them open in order for the truck to be able to come around the
so
corner.
we have a
into the house.
process through the transportation division to be able to reserve a meter. They only need a little bit of advance notice, then they put a sign out that no parking is allowed there.
They would put the sign out.
I believe the transportation division puts the sign out. But, so there's a process we do that's elsewhere in the city that you can reserve the meters in front of your business for deliveries like this. We actually think it will work quite well. We were communicating back and forth through John Sisson and then,
We don't have him anymore.
right,
And
So-
they've been having to pay private movers to move these trucks since this went in. Which is kind of a burden to our business. I just don't think anyone thought about it. The need for the turning radius, big
That's
trucks.
surprising. Like that, we have codes for fire engines to get around.
Yeah, it wasn't looked at.
well, they can deliver the trucks down the corridor.
Well, they can't get to the store.
They can get,
They can go down Parsons Street, but they can't get into their parking lot in the rear and they can't get to the front of the store anymore, which are the two areas that trucks need to get to. So
I
anyway,
was-
they've talked about it. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's too specific.
yeah,
Fine.
Councilor
Thanks.
Front, you have speakers.
Yeah, I just, the planters, I forgot to mention, there were a lot of comments about the planters being called rest buckets. So, I mean, I think that the planters are controversial. And I guess, I'm sure you pick the materials because they're already rusted, they won't rust. But I'm not sure they're the most beautiful planters in the world.
and thank you for that feedback. I believe it's called
Repurposed.
Corten
Rusty.
steel. It's called Corten steel. It ages through different colors. And will essentially, I believe it next is bright orange and then eventually into this deep brown color.
Oh. Okay,
There was a lot of negative feedback about them.
yes,
Is what you're saying.
yes.
I like them,
I
but
do
just.
too.
I don't mind them, but there's a lot of negative feedback.
You like?
Okay, so
No, I didn't.
one last, maybe it's number.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you received from May through September, many emails. Have you received any since then or no?
Very intermittently, very
Okay.
intermittently. Those were, that was the chunk of our emails, and then since then it's been just on and off,
All right.
sporadic.
Do you guys follow social media on it or do you just look for input that comes directly?
Oh, we'll check too.
There's a lot of comments that happen on the variety of Newton community Facebook pages.
Yeah,
So
we're on
follow
the-
it. There's quite a lot. of
Yeah,
open
we do, well,
Discussion about this.
yeah, we definitely check.
So you are, so you're getting a lot of feedback back.
All right, let's go on to the data.
Okay,
Oh,
oh, it hasn't loaded yet,
it's-
just a moment. Here we go. So this is a data, so first of all, our baseline data from fall of 2024 and our post-implementation data from fall of 2025 are on our project website, which is newtonma.gov/Washington Street with street spelled out. The reports are quite detailed and include the raw data. So don't print them, they're, first one's 250 plus pages, the second is 300 plus pages. And we wanted to talk through the project success measures that we laid out at public facilities in, I believe it was May of 2024, with our consultant, Howard Stein Hudson. So we'll talk through this post-implementation data as compared to the baseline data. So post-implementation data, we measured the first full week, the second full week of October. So this is 6 weeks post-implementation, but because of the construction configuration over the summer, people had a chance to get used to the road configuration a little bit. So 6 weeks out, we noted the first 3 targets here: average speeds on Washington Street closer to 25 miles per hour, 85th percentile speeds on Washington Street closer to 30, and the max speed under 45. We achieved all of those. Did you get to that?
Yeah.
Here we go. This shows this a little bit better.
So the goals were 25, 30, and 45.
For those, yes. And so here we go. The most common speed shifted from the 30 to 35 mile per hour bucket to the 25 to 30 mile per hour bucket. 76% of vehicles in 2025 were traveling under 30 miles per hour compared to 44% in fall of 2024. And we included this graphic here as a reminder, even small reductions in vehicle speeds can produce meaningful safety benefits, reducing stopping distance and giving drivers more time to see, react, and yield, both to drivers pulling up from side streets and especially to pedestrians in the crosswalk. Average and 95th percentile speeds dropped by about 2 miles per hour in both directions on Washington Street. 85th percentile speeds dropped by 1 mile an hour. And then this graphic leads us to our next slide on crashes. Okay, the goal was a reduction in collisions along the corridor. Again, we looked at September and October of 2024 and 2025 and compared crashes. We have a graph here, show you a little bit more. Normally, when you look at crash patterns, you look at 3 to 5 year blocks. And this is a 2-month block in September, October of 2024, and again in 2025. So we can't draw any definitive conclusions, but we're headed in a good direction here. So pre-pilot, 5 out of the 6 crashes on the corridor for those 2 months were angle collisions, which are among the most severe. In the first 2 months of the pilot, there were no angle crashes and a reduction in overall crashes. Let's see, crash data were taken from MassDOT Impacts portal and Newton Police for those 2 time periods.
Just a clarification, if I may.
Yes.
Are those the cars pulling out and hitting like the people on Washington Street when you mean an angle crash?
Yeah, an angle crash, this kind of crash, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Vehicle to vehicle, or is that vehicle to human being?
Vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to person, vehicle to
Oh,
stationary
They're
object.
not separated out in terms of type of.
No,
Well, there was 0 that involved pedestrians, so then none of them must have been pedestrian.
right, over 2 months, it's hard to come up with conclusions. Okay, part of our focus was on making sure that traffic was not diverting to other routes. So this would be from Washington to Watertown, Washington to Austin, or our side streets. So we saw no evidence of new diversion pattern to side streets. We saw a 19% decrease in traffic on Washington Street itself. Watertown Street showed no increase in traffic. Austin Street was under construction in fall of 2024, so we needed to use earlier data, which was 2021. So we will want to monitor that going forward.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what I did notice in the data is that some of the side streets, like Eddy, others, the volume did increase.
It overall, Eddy decreased by 92 vehicles.
And I just wonder if there's some pattern that you can see, and I understand it's I think for the committee, it's important to realize early data. Directionally, it's really good, but it's early because it's only been one season.
Problem with Waze. Waze sends
Right.
people on Eddy Street to Elliott Street to get to Walking from Washington. So
It was Eddy and a couple others that were, I think, parallel I was seeing more traffic.
So Eddy had an increase of 115 headed north, so from 1500 to 1600 basically, and a decrease by 200 headed south, so 1700 to 1500. So a net decrease of 100, just an increase headed north and a significant decrease headed south.
Okay.
Those people trying to get people.
Yeah, the data are interesting to try and think through the patterns. This was a week's worth of data too, and so a lot of it is impacted by other things that were going on that week on the corridor, probably, and other projects. Yeah, it is fun to try and think through what is going on.
What was the week?
Pull that up.
And that's hard to do.
October 4th through the 10th. We worked around city events. We wanted a week where school was in session the whole week. And that was the week that fit. So the target was a 20% increase in pedestrian and bicycle volumes at peak times. and we achieved that for bicycle pedestrian. We did see an increase in the western end for pedestrians, slight decrease in the eastern end. This data is largely from a single day. So if we're interested in gathering more bicycle and pedestrian data, we should think about exactly what we want to collect and the best way to collect it. Overall, we saw a clear shift away from sidewalk bicycle riding. 72% of cyclists use the shared use path, only 13% on the sidewalk, whereas before the pilot, almost all bicyclists were on the sidewalk. In addition, staff, meaning mostly Hannah and I, conducted several accounts during the morning commute, so 8:30 to 9 a.m. On average, from those 4 counts, 27 cyclists were seen on shared use path versus 2 on the north side sidewalk. So cyclists seem to be adjusting. Parking utilization, this is another thing that we've been tracking very carefully. Parking project success metric was to keep parking utilization under 90%. We achieved that. The average weekday utilization increased to 61%, up from 31% in 2024. So as you can see, parking utilization is very high at the west end, and then lighter at the east end, though we saw parking throughout the day at the east end, particularly in front of the new dog park. And we collected parking data both during the weekday and weekend periods, and that is at the back of the technical memorandum. You can get into detail on parking utilization by hour. They looked from 10 to 4. Okay, then we'll go through some of these. So the goal was not to increase travel time along the corridor, so from Chestnut to Lowell by more than 35%. So we achieved that in the westbound direction. And the eastbound direction, we did not achieve that. And that is because at the same time we were implementing the Washington Street pilot, we added a new traffic signal at Lowell Ave, which now allows for protected left turns from both directions. So that those traffic signal changes have resulted in additional time to allow for those left turn movements, which means the other directions of the signal queue up more. Exactly. Yeah. We have heard really positive feedback about making those left turns and about the signal in general, which is great. But it does result in this longer queue, really just 2 periods a day. I believe it was 30 minutes in the morning from the 8 to 9 window, and then 15 minutes in the evening. Traffic backs up there. Yeah.
Does the no right turn on Chestnut and Washington have anything to do with this pilot, or is that a totally separate traffic plan that's been put into place?
I did look at that in detail. So it was added, I believe, as part of our pilot. It is the crosswalk there when it shifted and during the West Newton project shifted back pretty significantly. So to be able to see to pull forward, you have to pull across the crosswalk kind of out into the intersection to look to the left for oncoming vehicles. So we did add it as part of our project. Some of the feedback that we received from people pulling out of Dunkin' Donuts and the other businesses as well was concern about the oncoming vehicles too. There's just a lot of activity in general right at that intersection.
Their concern was eastbound traffic on Washington coming out of the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot.
People pulling out of the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, they wanted the clear path to be able to take that left.
That's always gonna be difficult.
Which is always difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
The no turn on red protects at least them a little bit more from that movement. We did get quite a bit of feedback on the no turn on red at Chestnut.
I get tons of feedback.
Yeah.
About that.
And there's those parking stalls too along Chestnut, which can affect the queuing. So there's less room for people to get into that right lane anyways. Do you know what I mean? If you're always backing up because those parked cars are sort of congesting that area. Do you know what I mean?
Well, also because it's not in real time, you stop there and you can see clearly no one is coming and you stay stopped, and then 5, 6, 12 cars back up behind you when no one is coming and you're stopped. at Chestnut, and that's what I hear a lot about. So I don't know if we can try and get to something about that.
Yeah, I think that would be a question
Big
for our engineering team about.
Well, I just wondered if
safety.
it was part of this, you said it was, so that's something that you guys would do that too.
It was added at the same time as this. I think I'd want to turn it over to our engineering team. Look at,
Just as a Ward 3 counselor, I hear a lot about that intersection, and
we appreciate you.
similarly, but not in your pilot area. Waltham and Washington has just tons of backup. Again, we thought we were getting like real-time signals when the Washington Street Enhancements Project went in, and that didn't happen. So people are stopped there, paying attention to the lights when they're there. They could easily be taking rights on Reds, both Waltham and Chestnut. So, okay.
No, thank you for that feedback. That's helpful. We'll pass it along.
But Chestnut is one of the very few north-south routes for Newton. So there's just tons of backup there, especially at those rush hour times that you were talking about, like late afternoon in particular.
All right, let's respond.
Yeah.
Okay, emergency.
Feedback.
I know.
And we could talk about this for hours, so. The emergency response, so working with emergency responders. We worked with the fire department early on. They tested the corridor with their ladder truck. We met them out there on site and we made adjustments early on. And certainly if they continue to have concerns about the corridor, we will immediately make changes so that emergency response can continue to be rapid. And then the average queues not spilling back into any adjacent intersection. So we didn't, again, except for Lowell Ave eastbound approach, we didn't see queues really anywhere. Queues were typically a single vehicle. Some of the queues improved under the pilot as well. For example, on Eddy Street, the maximum observed queue decreased from 11 vehicles in fall 2024 to 5 in fall of 2025. I don't know if we want to discuss any questions about the data collection or move right into Shauna snow removal.
I have some questions. That's okay. So the first was picking up on something that you raised and that I noticed in the data, which is the traffic speed reduction struck me as a lot smaller than I would have thought. 1 mile an hour, 2 miles per hour, and I definitely can understand and respect the visual you put up about, you know, safety and impact and how likely a pedestrian is, for example, to survive a crash at different miles per hour. I guess I was just wondering if you're satisfied with the reduction so far. I understand directionally it's the right direction, but 1 to 2 miles per hour didn't feel.
Yeah, we were surprised about that as well, that it wasn't more than that. Again, we'd want to collect a lot more data and see if the week that we were looking at wasn't a typical week, and then also having given people more of a chance to adjust to the pilot as well. So yes, we would like to see speeds decrease more. I should also mention that the speed limit on the corridor now is 25 miles per hour. So we would like to see speeds decrease even more.
I mean, I was just also thinking about it in my mind, because obviously there are a lot of different metrics to measure this by, but at some point there's going to be a decision point and, you know, deciding what is success and what isn't. I don't really know how to think about these different thresholds of what wins, so to say, in terms of which priorities and what's working. So just to let you know, it's something that I am interested in continuing to follow. The other thing I was really looking for was sort of like general traffic backup data, because most of the complaints and the chatter and the social media that I've seen have been people expressing frustration when they're stuck at some kind of backup. And as far as I could tell from the data collection, it really only highlighted 2 periods of time.
Yep.
Both of which seem to be around Newton North arrival and dismissal. Is that, or actually, I guess one was in the evening.
Yeah, so the
Like 15 minutes at one point and 30
Yeah.
minutes at another. Can you just sort of dig into that a little bit? Because I mean, obviously that's an issue because that's a period people need to be on time to school. But secondly, the complaints seem to span a larger period of time than that. So I'm just curious how much you think that particular description of traffic backup captured what's really happening.
it's interesting because Hannah and I have spent a lot of time on the corridor, and that is what we observe. We can observe in the morning that the traffic backs up headed towards Newton North. So between 8:30 and 9, it really backs up, past Walker Street, sometimes past all the way back towards Eddy. It moves fairly quickly. And then getting more people to utilize that second through lane will be helpful as well. And then after that, there really isn't a backup at any time of day headed in that direction. A little bit again in the evening. I don't know that it's around Newton North, it's probably more around commuter traffic. And then there's various other reasons that it slows, and we've noticed concerns during the day. It could be Dunstan, Newton Crossing development is getting a delivery. Police are still out there and it's just getting trucks in and out. So when a truck is backing in, then they have to shut down the corridor. That would have been the case whether it was 2 lanes or 4 lanes. These are big trucks. So we noticed backups then. And then Chestnut Street has some backup in the evening as it did before as well. But we aren't noticing the long queues outside of those 30 minutes in the morning and a little bit in the evening. I'm not sure if most of the people who are concerned are the ones who are in those queues or experiencing those queues. It does back up at Lowell in all directions at that time. There's just so much traffic going over to Newton North right then. That even changing the signal, I'm not sure would make a difference there because there are just so many vehicles. There's also a change at Newton North, reversing the one-way direction of Elm Road, putting traffic out onto Lowell. And that pilot seems to be working quite well, but it does feed more vehicles into that intersection from a different direction. Just a lot of vehicles then.
Okay, interesting. I don't know that there are further adjustments to be made, but just another thing. So, as my colleagues mentioned, the 2 things I hear about are the planters and, these backups. And so it is kind of helpful to understand how real the different descriptions or concerns are that people are raising. The last thing is more of a global comment for the committee, and this may really be more of a PST topic, but because the no right on red thing came up, this last term, I experienced a lot more discussion and focus on the city side of discouraging right turns on red. And I was observing a lot of those decisions being made on a one-off basis in traffic council. And this specifically came up in Ward 7 with respect to the Ward Waverly intersection, where we now have no right turn on red in all directions. And we basically have 2 periods of time a day that people are crossing that intersection where we have crossing guard serving there. But what really gave rise to it was that a crossing guard was struck in the intersection. But the Ward 7 counselors, one of our big takeaways was it didn't seem to us that one-off policy about, no right turn on red should necessarily be made in that forum by traffic council, as opposed to maybe like a broader discussion. So for example, Ms. Fairley was in speaking about how, like, from an accessibility standpoint, she and colleagues in her field were really interested in dissuading right turn on red, all of which is very valid and I think we should talk about. I think we just should be a little bit more intentional about how we're making these decisions and that it's not just sort of ad hoc traffic council. So.
Thank you. I just wanna build on her first comment. That might, Councilor Grossman. So she brought up the data and the collection. Do you have 18-month goals, 2-year goals, 3-year? I mean, what, as you look out, it looks like things are on track. What are the goals long term? Is a long-term project, and how are those established? How do you measure those? Everything going forward.
I think the speed question is a good one because we had one spot where we're capturing speed on the corridor. It's across from Dunstan Street there. It would be great if we collected speed at other locations, just to have an idea of what the speed is along the corridor. I mean, a lot of it could have depended on what was going on with the construction project that day too. So kind of diving into more into safety, definitely the reduction in crashes and reduction in severity of crashes. Getting people used to the shared use path and then tying that in with other infrastructure. For the Elm Road Traffic Council trial, we have a lot of students biking to Newton North. We're looking at adding formal bicycle lanes on that section of Elm Road to get students all the way to the bike racks. Right now, they get over to Elm Road and then would either need to bike on the sidewalk or walk their bikes that next section. So work to tie this into more of our pedestrian and cyclist routes. And then also, as some of these developments move along, to increase bus ridership.
But is there a nirvana, like, is there, like, you have a goal, I want all of the traffic at 25? Probably unrealistic, but I'm just wondering if you have these long-term goals, and every time we see a presentation, will we see, okay, this date versus this date versus this date, so we can keep watching
I
progressively?
think the question is, what additional interventions would we consider to achieve those goals? So we need to check in with the new administration on
Okay.
what the goals will be. And then ultimately, the goal is to make something permanent.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. So at what point do we have enough information to say that what we're doing, we've learned from and we're ready to make it permanent or adjust it to make something else permanent and then fund it and all of that? And that really will be more so a question for Commissioner Sullivan.
Counselor Laird.
Yeah, it was just a follow-up on, Councilor, Grossman's comment about the speed, and one thing that I really was curious about, and I'm not sure you got enough data yet, but that corridor prior to this pilot was just, you could go 50 miles an hour down that. And that, my biggest hope was you would see big reduction. Now, there's only a certain cohort of people that go that fast, but it's significant because, of course, that's the most dangerous driving to do, and the concerns with bicyclists and pedestrians. Have you seen, I would guess you have seen a reduction in people that are going like super speeders, they're going 45 miles per hour or more down that corridor?
I'd have to dig into that data. What we did realize is that this is also an emergency response corridor. And so some of the high-speed vehicles that we were recording in the data were police vehicles as well. So we chose to focus instead on the 95% rather than the outliers. We certainly, it looks like that is a trend, that we have fewer of those faster vehicles. I mean, also, they only can go so fast.
Right, the road doesn't invite
Yeah,
speed anything, so you have to be more careful. And just the other comment that I'll follow up with Councilor Grossman also about the no red on red signs. We have the same signs at Jackson and Pearl for the new schools too. And I do think we should think about that, because in the evening, it's dead there. You should be able to take it right on red, and like at the end of Deadlands at Manhattan and Chester Street, there is a time on it,
Yeah.
And why can't we just be more thoughtful about the time? And it was my imagination, or did I see that the no right on red on Washington and Walnut went away?
I believe those were up temporarily while the no turn on red with the arrow that X'd out when those signs were not working. They had no turn on red signs up then, but now those signs are working again.
The signs are
There was no turn on red, and the sign wasn't on, so I took a turn on red.
Everybody is doing that, thank God.
But I'm just saying, in terms of being able to balance, of safety, there is balance there, and I just think we should be thoughtful about, especially in the school areas where really they need them in the morning and they need them in that part of the afternoon. They don't need them at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, those no turn on red signs that light up when you push the pedestrian signal are great, but then they're expensive. And then when they aren't working, then they're, I assume, are expensive to replace and keep in service, but more creative solutions around that makes sense.
Okay.
Counselor Albright.
So, we have all this data that we're collecting about cars. And I mean, I've heard that it's easier for pedestrians to cross the street, but we're not collecting any data on satisfaction of pedestrians and being able to cross the street. And bicyclists who are able to bicycle safely on the street. So there's a piece of data, there's some data that's missing here about how much better it is for quality of life for people who aren't in cars. And I don't know how you deal with that,
Yeah.
but it feels like it's missing.
No, that's a good, I agree, that's a good point. I think that's something we can definitely look into with surveys and surveying people who are out there. Going to the schools and talking to the students who are using the corridor. Yeah, I agree. And I'll say in terms of that data so far. We are receiving emails about people who are expressing that it is more comfortable for them to cross the street and to ride in the shared use path. So we are anecdotally receiving that data, but we can definitely do more outreach.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
The other thing is sort of a building on Counselor Kalis's question, which is, you know, I've heard the mayor speak about the future, the grand future of Washington Street. And are we learning in this pilot about what could be done on Washington Street beyond the blocks between Chestnut and Lowell? And I don't know the answer to that, and I don't even know how you do that, but are we thinking about that? Because I heard comments from people that said, well, we couldn't possibly do this on the rest of Washington Street, so we might as well just put it back. So I think thinking about how this applies to all of Washington Street might be something worth thinking about.
Yeah, I agree. And that's certainly a been a goal of the pilot, was use it to inform a lot larger picture.
Yeah.
A lot more planning would need to go into looking at traffic volumes and other plans. We have the new commuter rail station coming soon, which is exciting. Making sure it ties in vehicularly and bike ped as well. So yes.
So I think it's a bigger question. It's bigger than just this area. That we need to, and not yet, because you just really, it's still new. But as we go forward, I want you to think a little bigger about how this would apply in the future. And
Yeah.
how we would measure that and how we would figure it out.
Yes, that is definitely a goal. And also using what we learn across the city, and the MBTA is very interested in the bus platforms. I meet with them monthly. And they want to know about how snow removal is doing, how, we're testing the best way to put up the bus signs on that. How is it working with the median islands, et cetera. So I think a lot of the region is pretty interested in that as well.
Yeah, thank you. The only comment I would have is that when I looked at this one graph, it actually spoke quite eloquently to, the differential between how everybody's speed was shifting and then the differential. So that's, it's not captured in that 1 to 2 miles. This is what tells you what's actually happening. And I think that your idea of doing, data capturing for other sites, other, places along the corridor will be much more revealing. So I think that's an important thing to be doing. I love the left turn, on the intersection of Lowell and Washington Street, because like you were saying, Chestnut, those are the corridors. We either, take Lowell or you go all the way up to Chestnut. And, that's that mitigation, those mitigation dollars really did a great job of bettering, transit through that intersection.
Thank you, Trio.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other question I had was like 2027 is the end date for the trial. Is it not? Somewhere I got something. Well, I thought that
No, so-
2027 was there's something happening in 2027.
That's the end of the plant warranty.
Oh. So how did the snow removal go?
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah,
segue.
I wanted to find
And-
out about that, like,
That's
okay, okay,
That's
All right.
part of your presentation.
oh, great, okay,
But I won't ask that right
Yeah.
now.
okay.
Kelly, do you have a question for it?
Quick.
Oh,
Sorry,
do you have a
Kelly, got you
question?
done.
Yeah,
Are you
I'm pretty, yeah, I could go on and on, but,
Okay.
yeah.
You know, I'll be really quick this time. To follow up on Councilor Grossman's, I would have expected, what we heard from residents was that, speedway, 40, 45, 50 miles an hour on time. But 1 to 2 mile an hour speed reductions, I was expecting 15, 25 miles an hour reduction. But I see why you took that data only in 1 week, and Dunstan East Nepal crossing is going on. Emergency vehicles use it, so it's hard to really get your teeth into what the data really means. But yet, not only that, but I would have expected a much bigger drop in speed. Some people still think some people speed there, but you're right, it is narrowed, it is harder to be a speedway. I would love to, I'm looking forward to hearing about the bus platforms and snow removal. And when you came before us in spring or summer, I forget exactly when it was, you talked about that interconnectivity of the bike path, particularly to Newton North and Waddington. So now I was interested to hear you just mention it again, because that hasn't been anything that you've been able to address yet, right? Sounds like not part
well,
of this.
It has, we laid out a route, and their students, so students are staying on their bikes to get all the way to the bike racks at Newton North. They're just riding against the flow of traffic, primarily a little bit on the sidewalks, mostly, I've been out to capture photos. And so that's why we need to formalize the two-way bicycle connection on Elm Road. So that bike connection is working very well. Some members of our team, including Hannah and I, were out Wednesdays to observe on the corridor. We handed donuts out to students to try and get them from the sidewalk on the north side to the shared use path.
Library.
I know some counselors joined us as well. Counselor Maliki joined us, and Counselor Wright one day, and it worked. They all shifted. We also saw parents dropping students on the north side. They would cross at the crosswalk over into the shared use paths to walk the rest of the way. So I think that the momentum was going, we stopped going when it got colder, but the students are still out there. Even this week with the snow, I believe there were 6 cyclists earlier this week who were biking. And then a number of pedestrians who seem to walk no matter what the weather is.
The private contract snow plowing of the path seems to be working very well, so I'm actually surprised more people weren't bike riding, because that part was plowed down to pavement when the road was not. And some bicyclists are really avid and will do it anyway.
Yeah, students aren't wearing coats either, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or socks.
They're very hard. Yeah, do you have another question about data collection, or do you want us to turn to snow?
No, yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to reinforce some of the things, because this section does go through wards 2 and 3, so it's why probably Counselor Albright and I are hearing a lot of stuff. It's our wards and Maliki and Wright too. But it sounds like you're also very much in touch with getting feedback as you can about your resources for that.
Let me know when you're getting up the donut stands.
Ride your bike over,
You can
okay.
smell it.
Yeah. We got to meet a lot of people. We were there from 8:30 to 9 at the City Hall.
Well, it's only one day of bike data collection.
Yeah.
So that's very hard to know what that means.
And it was the day after we had torrential rain and streets flooded around Newton, and sometimes it takes a day to recover from that if you're biking or walking.
Snow.
No, okay.
I think the photos speak for themselves. It's very clear over there, our contractor is doing a great job. They are responsible for the snow plowing, shoveling and salting of the roadway, the bike lanes, the bus platforms and the crosswalks. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
What's the feedback you hear from them about the bus platforms?
Nothing, because they bid on it, they knew. So they have the equipment to handle those platforms.
I was anticipating a lot of problems with that, so I'm happy to hear.
Yeah.
Coming up and getting it.
We had 2 bids, one for 273,000 and the other for 39,000.
Wow. Which one you picked? Wow. Wow. You can tell who didn't want to do it.
Counselor Albright.
Can you tell us about your opinion about the planters? Problem for the flowers.
Part of the reason that we did end up contracting this out is that we don't have the equipment for the bus platforms or to get around the planters. So it's an equipment, it's not that I'm against them, just we don't have the equipment to deal with them. So the more projects that go in like this, the more we are going to need better equipment to deal with
Do
it.
they have to get out and hand shovel?
Yes.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And then finally, go ahead.
So looking ahead, just wrapping everything up, working to coordinate with the Newton Crossing, formerly Dunstan Development, for the design of the streetscape in front of their property. Jen's in coordination with them for that. Currently, it's just the Jersey barriers along that area. And then, like we've all been talking about, to gather more data, whether that's anecdotal or formal, and then continuing to engage the public with feedback, as you were referring to earlier, and then making any sort of adjustment based on that feedback.
Thank you. I would encourage you, Let's go to Council Albright now.
I was just gonna ask you, when is Newton Crossing gonna get their Jersey barriers out of the way?
Just spoke with them. I believe it's summer. It will be restored by the end of summer 2022.
Okay, so that's soon.
And Dunstan Street is still one way, but that will return to two way at some point, maybe around that same timing. So that definitely will result in some traffic pattern changes.
So what I was gonna say is I would encourage you to think creatively about what you can measure. Because the question is gonna come about extending this or continuing it, and counselors are gonna have questions about things that we can't anticipate. So whatever data you're getting, if it's anecdotal, put it in spreadsheets, put it in different categories so you know. Because that's really the only answer that we have. That's what we can point to. So think creatively about what you can be measuring and what you can't. And if you need some counselors to help you on measuring, I don't know what it might be, but we'd be willing to brainstorm that. But I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you. Hannah made a really interesting timeline of emails that we received versus what was going in for construction. So people were really concerned about specific things during construction, and then we'd implement the next part of the project and address those concerns. It was very interesting. So many of the concerns over the summer were things that were already included in the pilot but hadn't been installed yet. So we can revisit some of that and see if there are other things that people had been interested in that weren't part of the pilot that we can measure, or we really are interested in some of the feedback from the shared use path users, and certainly the businesses too, now that it's fully implemented.
And when we were receiving emails, we were sort of categorizing those, is this a planter concern? Is this a parking concern? So we were able to sort of see how many concerns were in each one of those higher level categories, which was interesting too. We can share that information as well.
Yeah, and please share your suggestions
Yeah.
too. We welcome them. The Washington Street email, Hannah and I both look at those messages. It allows us to organize and make sure we're keeping track of suggestions. So please reach out to us too.
I think the extension of it is going to be larger than this piece, which is probably why we started with this piece as we head towards the corner. This part was more doable than really in either direction, but heading towards, the Mass Pike and the corner is really tough. So the more information you have before you head into that, the better.
Another discussion. Another discussion is how people like the new lights at the circle.
Oh, yeah.
That's all right.
So the other thought I have is to go back to the Washington Street Vision Plan.
Yes.
And this was a feature that we all agreed that we wanted to implement from that plan. So why? Why did we want to do this? What were we going to achieve? We were gonna make Washington Street a more livable street. So, are we achieving that? So have a look again at the goals that we were trying to achieve originally with this pilot.
Yeah, I sorry to mention it earlier, but I wrote down the guiding principles for the achieving safe and multimodal transportation. And I think one that stood out to me, the last one, was test before we invest. I think that's what we're doing. Exactly. So, any sort of feedback is great, because we are able to, we are making those changes and receiving that feedback. So if something permanent goes in, we know, this is what we've heard, so we're gonna do it this way.
One of the things that was suggested in that pilot was, could we have some kind of pop-up stalls on the turnpike side of that street? Could you think about that and how we would integrate those pop-up stalls to make it a two-sided street instead of a one-sided street? So it's just something to think about in the future.
Councilor Grossman.
I just wanted to pick up on what Councilor Albright was raising, because when you started talking about the original pilot, my mind went to the really visually interesting and appealing, pictures and vision that was there. And a big part of it was like activating it. And while this is all great, we haven't even scratched the surface of all of that potential. that was sort of shown to us, and obviously all of that takes money, and I know that's not, an easy thing, but maybe especially if we look ahead towards like, looking ahead, as you just put up, like towards spring or summer. I don't know if there are like low cost ways to try out something like that, or even just like, how we have, Newton Open Studios, like, I don't know, a pop-up craft day or something. But this kind of topic has been on my mind with a few of the controversial topics we have before us right now. Where, when the idea was first presented, and I'm not trying to derail us to another topic, but the parklet and the triangle parking lot, there were like igloos there. Yeah, it's like, wow, wouldn't that be great, and it's hard to really understand the full value add of what we might be able to be achieving if all we're really doing is like, I don't know, like a much more limited scope of what we were all looking at together. And just the last comment I'll make as you continue on data collection, and we're talking about longer stretches of the Washington Street corridor. One thing that I was trying to kind of distill in the data, and I'm not really sure I fully did, is the increase in through time for different portions of the day. So like it looked like the outlier was maybe like 6 incremental minutes at a certain point of the day. And while on that stretch, that doesn't seem like a horrible number, if all of a sudden you're talking about like 3-4 times that length and somebody's commute is going up by 20 minutes a day or something, that starts to become really significant to people's quality of life. So I don't know, that it would be really important for me to understand what that kind of an impact would be on somebody's real like travel time, to and from school, their job, et cetera, as we're looking at additional segments.
One thing that we've noticed when we've been out there is how popular the Walker Dog Park is. And we've gotten requests from people to add picnic tables outside of the dog park for people who don't have dogs. Which is an interesting idea. I don't know if we'll find funding for that, but we're keeping our ear open.
Ask Parks and Rec.
Yeah, we're working with Parks and Rec on that.
What
Yeah,
about the community gardens too? Is that any,
further down.
it's part of this? Is that along this stretch?
Well, it's further up, further that way.
Oh, is it beyond?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, oh, yes, beyond.
It's way, yeah. Yeah, that's why we didn't take the whole dog, that whole area, we didn't take it all for dog park because people may want to use the rest of it, so,
Right?
yeah.
Right, so we just on this.
So we should hold, but
We should hold it, yeah.
so we'll go.
All right, so there's a motion to hold. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Okay, any abstentions?
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We appreciate all of your hard work.
Or May or whenever, come back again.
Sort of related, I was talking with economic development people and some of the businesses in Western School yesterday, coming around. Same thing, we're just discussing like increasing vitality and usability, and that's something else you guys dovetail. You're talking about the like the closet and the lighting and like twinkly lights in winter. There are easy things to do like that, backing up into the square, because this project starts right after the vitality of the square and the businesses, like really just up beyond. It's really more, down in the square, but there might be a way of connecting and enhancing local businesses and economic development with this in terms of, because I think narrowing it, slowing the traffic, making it safer to walk across wasn't a part of it. Western Square has always been like wide and not very pleasant. So making this be more part of that original enhancements project, which honestly I have to say hasn't been a great success. And part of it is the business development. There are a lot of empty storefronts. That's not something you guys can control, but just to let you know, if you're thinking of like backing up and making that vitality thing. It won't be, I don't think it needs to be about paint, it's about lights, little lights or something. But there's a big effort about to start now, especially with the new economic development.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I take off the meeting, can you get us the data, the before data, as best you have for the Austin Street counts.
It's part of the memo.
And, those asked to ask for, the turning radius to large vehicles, which kind of ties into that problem we were talking about. Standard deliveries, just in a picture that we all saw, a truck, blocking Washington Street, block traffic there.
Is there a particular street you'd want us to
It
get?
seemed to be around, side Arlington there.
I don't know if we have that. I'm not sure, if that's something that our staff can calculate. But yeah, in terms of how big a truck can make which turns,
Yeah.
the fire department can make all the turns.
Planning, traffic planners could do that. There are standard radii for certain sizes of vehicles.
That's what I'm saying,
Ready to move
we
on.
can get
Yeah.
it for you. We just have one of our
Okay.
calls.
Alright, so this item. Yeah, 26, request for discussion and ordinance change to only require use of sidewalk installation if the existing sidewalk is damaged during construction. Councilors Albright, Kalis, and Leary requesting a discussion on ordinance change regarding chapter 29, sections 157 to 166 of the revised ordinances requirement to install a sidewalk on renovation exceed house costs. The homeowner typically learns at the end of a long renovation project that a new sidewalk will be required at a cost of between $25,000 to $50,000, depending on sidewalk configuration. The ordinance change would only require new sidewalk installation if the existing sidewalk was damaged during construction. Right.
So currently, ordinance 342 requires sidewalk replacement when a home is demolished and rebuilt or when it is substantially remodeled, it's over 50%. I recognize substantial remodels can range widely in scope. Many models run to the interior or involve modest additions and may not materially change site conditions. For that reason, I'm suggesting sidewalk requirement for substantial remodels, but retain it for demolitions and new construction. Tear downs are the clearest and most appropriate trigger for the sidewalk ordinance and curbing upgrades. These projects already involve full site reconstruction, excavation, heavy equipment. Adding sidewalk and curb replacement at that stage is efficient, practical, and minimizes additional disruptions. At the same time, eliminating the automatic sidewalk and curbing requirement for remodels addresses concerns about requirements for projects that may not affect exterior site conditions. It is important to know that if the sidewalk or curbing is damaged as part of the remodel, it would still be required to be repaired or replaced. Property owners would remain responsible for restoring any public infrastructure they have during. This compromise preserves the city's ability to incrementally build out the sidewalk network. If we eliminate the requirement entirely, we loses one of its most reliable mechanisms for expanding and modernizing sidewalks over time. Sidewalks and curbs are not cosmetic, they're satanic structure. They support school routes, pedestrian walking spaces, accessibility, drainage, and winter operations. Retaining this requirement for tear downs protects those public safety outcomes. This approach is also consistent with how we treat other infrastructure. When a building is demolished or rebuilt, private sewer and water services must be replaced. Sidewalk and curbs should be part of that same infrastructure requirement. Finally, DPW already has discretion to waive sidewalk replacement when conditions warrant, so the flexibility remains even for Taylor Rose.
Councilor Albright.
Yes, I'm thrilled that you're willing to do this for the remodels because this will make a huge difference to so many people who we've all heard from get to the end of the project. Then they learn that the costs went up and then suddenly now they're responsible for the sidewalk, and replacing it when fixing it when it's been damaged is totally appropriate.
I do want to assure you that at the beginning of the project, they are providing that ordinance. They may not read it, and I understand that it's not necessarily always clear when they're dealing with somebody like this is required.
But the costs sometimes
Yeah.
go up during the project,
I-
and then
I
suddenly it applies.
I understand.
So thank you for that.
Councilor Getz.
Yeah, and it's not only the cost, it's the amount of renovation going on. Because they actually start moving into higher than 50%. So that it triggers this requirement. But I'm looking and I'm reading the language and I think you guys we'd have to you'd have to redock it because you've already got language in here. Unless, I don't think we can, I'm just wondering how we would deal with this because it's saying here, if the ordinance change would only require new sidewalk installation if the existing sidewalk was damaged during construction. So,
Approving with an amendment that.
yeah, but you're saying now that you're making the distinction between if the property is, it's, requirement to install a sidewalk when renovation exceeds the 50% of the housing cost is where we are right now. So I would suggest that, what you're suggesting here is you're saying that it's only demo.
Yeah, I think that the docket language will cover this. We can,
Okay.
we're allowed to not have exactly the wording of the docket
Will we see the language beforehand?
that you just read.
Yeah, I
I
think,
asked the law department to draft it.
Okay, that'd be great,
yeah,
that'd be great.
yeah, because
We
I
can
sort
look
of
at that
feel like this
before.
doesn't jog, like.
Or if we can do that before we actually vote on it in council, that'd be good. But so you will still be the arbiter of damage versus not damage, correct? Which is fine, I think that's fine, it's just
So we always take a picture.
oh, okay,
At the start of the project so that we have what the sidewalk looked like at the beginning.
Yeah.
So we'll be aware of those things.
okay. Sounds great.
I too am really happy. I love what you're suggesting here. Like some of us have been concerned about how many obstacles homeowners end up facing that, again, they're not fully aware of, even though they get the ordinance. I see it all the time in my line of work. By the end of the project, the last thing they want to do is pay for a new sidewalk or landscaping. They've already done all the other stuff. Everything has come in over budget and it's really hard. for them. So I like your discretion over it. I think this is much better and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just say thank you as well. I agree with everything. It was music to my ears to hear you talk. When you read your explanation about changes, and it's eminently reasonable and fair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Responsive and forward thinking.
No, well, that was easy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
hard.
I do think we're gonna have a problem with this, and, cause I don't see the shift in this language. It says, request for a discussion and ordinance change to only require a new sidewalk installation if the existing sidewalk is damaged during construction. It's pretty narrow.
I think there's other language in there that gives Commissioner Sullivan broader discretion.
We'll see what legal comes back.
You're gonna go to the law department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you wanna make it subject to second call, or not second call, but just,
Oh, it has to come back.
It has to come
oh, it has to come back to us anyway, right, okay, fine. So is there a motion to hold?
So I guess we hold.
Yeah.
Okay. Aye.
All those in favor?
I.
Aye. Anybody against? Any abstentions?
Would you have done this anyway?
Okay, thanks. Oh,
Were you thinking this way anyway? I'm just curious.
Yes. I'll explain what happened. There was a remodel going on and it was a corner lot. And they got stuck in the ADA ramp. It actually required a lot of engineering to get the grade. They would have had to hire an engineer to design an ADA ramp. That is a substantial cost.
Councilor Gordon, that was a very fast vote. I want to make sure that you were there.
I was here. I said aye. Thank you for checking.
All right, good.
Appreciate it.
Can I clarify who put forth the motion?
To hold, yeah. I tried to do it.
All
I
right,
didn't want you to have to do all the motions.
Secret over Josh Christmas rule.
that's right. Exactly. All right, thank you. I think that we are adjourned. That concludes our business. We are adjourned.
Recording stopped.